It's very encouraging. It's great to see that inflation is falling. That's what we've been planning and working for. Obviously, it is slightly higher than was anticipated in terms of the fall is greater. But there's no complacency here in the Treasury. We're working closely in lockstep with the Bank of England as we try to halve it this year and get it down to its long-term norm of 2%.
There have been questions asked of retailers that perhaps they've been profiteering and the like as well. But when one looks at the likes of Tesco, Sainsbury's, their profit margins pre-pandemic and now have actually fallen, while the food manufacturers have perhaps been the ones with still fairly higher profit margins. Will you be asking perhaps a few questions of them and how they could help in this situation and bring down those numbers?
Well, the Chancellor and myself have met with supermarkets. We've met with the different regulators, including the Groceries Adjudicator and the CMA, to ensure that they are taking appropriate action across the supply chain. So obviously it's a very complicated picture, but we work very closely with those bodies to ensure that the right savings are passed on and that we're dealing with inflation in the most appropriate joined up way.
Yeah. Do you feel that enough has been done thus far?
Well, as I say, this is a journey. We are working through different elements of it. You're right to say that we must look at all elements of that supply chain, and we continue to work with the appropriate regulators to see that actions are taken.
Yeah. What impact do you believe then that 6% pay rise for teachers, nurses, doctors and police will perhaps have on inflation?
Well, we don't believe it's inflationary. I announced that decision to the House of Commons last Thursday. We took the pay review body's conclusions in the round. We accepted them all. The reason it won't be inflationary is because we asked different government departments to make up the difference between what they anticipated they would have to pay and what they did have to pay consequential of those pay review body conclusions from their own budgets. So whilst we raised visa fees and we raised immigration health charges, we didn't raise taxes. And that was the key point that the IMF and others were warning about, that would be inflationary. And we weren't prepared to borrow more or increase taxes. We've managed to absorb those, and we don't believe they will be inflationary.
Do you still believe that hiking interest rates is still the best method to get inflation down here, or is there, i.e., a possible way for further government intervention?
Well, I think there are a number of elements. Obviously, the execution of monetary policy in the UK is the responsibility of the Bank of England, who have been independent now for over a quarter of a century. They make those decisions. But I, as the Chief Secretary, am responsible for government spending in the UK, and it's my job to grip that. And I'm also responsible for productivity in the public sector. And today I should be continuing my work on the productivity review across the whole of Whitehall to see that we spend money wisely and that we remove unnecessary expenditure and ensure that we are optimizing the way that we spend money across taxpayers' money across the public estate.
Yeah, as you note, then you talk about optimizing that spending. Are you looking at cuts in particular areas? I mean, I know that announcement will come at a later stage, but is that something you're perhaps looking at to try and aid this process?
I believe in an era of improved data analytics of AI, there are opportunities to deal with fraud, to deliver services in a more efficient way. And I'll be exploring everything to ensure that we continue to deliver on what we promised the British people, but we do so in the most cost-effective way. I have no targets with respect to cuts or savings. I am looking at first principles across each government department, expecting each Secretary of State to come forward, which they are, with sensible ideas of how things can be done better and differently.